Billy Wilder's last two films were Double Indemnity, a blistering noir, and The Lost Weekend, a searing portrait of alcoholism. After making those, Wilder spent time in post-war Germany reviewing horrific footage of concentration camps. Some say he was hoping to catch a glimpse of his missing mother. Wilder, remember, was a Jew who had fled Europe to escape the Nazis. So, after he returns to the States, what's his next logical film?
Well, Keir, I don't know if it's logical, but his follow-up to The Lost Weekend was, and I can hardly believe this even after having watched the movie itself, a Technicolor musical comedy about Imperial Austria.
I'm just as puzzled as you are. Welcome to the Filmographers podcast, the show where we study a director's entire career one film at a time. This season, we're giving the close-up to the great Billy Wilder. I'm Keir Graff, and with me is the great Michael Moreci. Mike, what's your one-sentence summary of The Emperor Waltz?
When a noble dog owned by a noble woman bites Bing Crosby's mutt, sparks fly when a wrong side of the tracks romance ensues, shaking Austria's fragile social scene to its core.
Listeners, there's nothing wrong with your earbuds. This movie was actually written by Charles Brackett and Billy Wilder, although it's not quite as innocent as it seems. And Wilder did sneak in some savage anti-Nazi commentary.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for Season 2 of the Filmographers podcast, our deep dive into legendary writer-director Billy Wilder.
We're grateful so many of you have chosen to support us on Patreon, and we're showing our appreciation by releasing ad-free versions of our main episodes, plus monthly episodes that are only available to our paid supporters. This month, we'll be talking about Wilder's time working for the U.S. Army in post-World War II Germany, where he reviewed horrific footage of Nazi death camps.
The film that came out of it is called Death Mills. It's heavy stuff, but it's both an important part of Wilder's story and an important bridge between his 1945 picture, The Lost Weekend, and the one released in 1948, The Emperor Waltz.
These Patreon exclusives are available to paid Patreon supporters at any level. If you've been thinking about upgrading your membership, now's the time. Just visit patreon.com/thefilmographerspodcast to show your support.
Once again, that's patreon.com/thefilmographerspodcast. If you join the $2 level, we'll send you a sticker. If you join for $5, we'll send you a coffee mug. Not ready to pay quite yet? Join for free, just so you see what we have to offer.
That's patreon.com/thefilmographerspodcast. Join today for the full Season 2 experience. Thank you so much for your support. We do it for you, and we couldn't do it without you. On February 17th, 1946, Charles Brackett and Billy Wilder were guests on the radio show of famed and feared gossip columnist Luella Parsons. The duo had come close to breaking up only a couple of years before, but now they were back together and back on top. When Parsons asked what they were doing next, Brackett answered, "This time we're just having fun. It's an operetta called The Emperor Waltz."
Making reference to a harrowing scene in The Lost Weekend, Wilder added, quote, "And instead of the bat and mouse, we're having Bing Crosby and Joan Fontaine," end quote. Keir, can you guess which duo had more on-screen chemistry?
I'm going with the bat and the mouse.
Ding, ding, ding.
Mike, we studied Steven Soderbergh in our first season and learned that the surprising variety of his first 5 films was very intentional. He wanted a challenge, and he didn't want to repeat himself. Even more than that, he knew he would never be like Stanley Kubrick. He wanted to be more like a director from the golden age of Hollywood, a Hawks, a Huston, a Wyler. Well, he didn't cite Billy Wilder, he may as well have. This was an era in which top directors were defined by versatility.
Even so, it's an odd choice. Brackett and Wilder were known as the Gold Dust Twins, amongst other monikers, so they didn't have to make this piece of fluff. And remember, when he was a screenwriter in Berlin during the 1930s, Wilder complained about having to shoehorn songs into every movie.
That he did. I do think there's something about him wanting to prove he can do it all, from a romantic comedy to a war picture to film noir and a portrait of addiction. But as Ed Sykov suggests in his book On Sunset Boulevard, there may also have been complex psychological phenomena at work. Wilder grew up in Vienna, so a fantasy of pre-World War I Austria could be seen as nostalgia, except his Jewish family had emigrated from Galicia, a poor part of the Austrian Empire, and were denied citizenship, even though they were all native German speakers. So they were not allowed to be fully Austrian. And now, as a successful Hollywood director who had just seen the aftermath of World War II firsthand, he was torn between past and present, between his identity as a European and his identity as a new American.
So you're saying that Billy Wilder used Bing Crosby to find out who he really is?
Sort of. Okay. Wilder does have a stand-in the movie, though, but it's not Der Bingle. It's a dog.
What's the idea of just running off after your dog has bitten my dog? I don't expect decent manners of that thing, but human beings, we expect them to act at least halfway human.
Take off your hat.
Look at that leg. Bitten clear to the bone. It bled for a half an hour, all over my rented suit.
Like Wilder's last few films, this one is also based on a true story. Danish inventor Valdemar Poulsen invented a magnetic wire recorder, the telegraphone, in 1898. Think of it as a precursor to the tape recorder. In 1900, he demonstrated it for Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria and recorded the emperor's voice. That clip, by the way, is believed to be the oldest magnetic audio recording to survive to this day. Wilder biographer Charlotte Chandler claims Joseph rejected it as a newfangled, frivolous invention. But this was also a person, quote, so conservative that he hadn't adjusted yet to indoor plumbing, end quote. Interesting. Joseph's plumbing issues aside, the audio we played translates as roughly, quote, the invention interests me very much, and I thank you for showing it to me, end quote.
If there's a theme to this season, it's why let the truth interfere with a good story. Anyway, this is a musical comedy or a comedy with songs, not a documentary. Wilder later said he intended it as an homage to his hero and mentor, Ernst Lubitsch, which may also have something to do with the old-fashioned trappings. Wilder and Brackett scripted a story about a plucky American traveling salesman, Virgil Smith, determined to demonstrate his gramophone for the Austrian emperor. He's sure a royal endorsement of this newfangled device, which wasn't all that newfangled by 1900, will make him rich.
His sales assistant is Buttons, a cute white American mixed breed dog, which, when posed looking into the gramophone sound horn, looks exactly like the old RCA Victor advertisements. Cute, I guess.
And this is where Wilder's first subversion comes in. Buttons first fights with, then falls in love with, Scheherazade, the pedigreed poodle of Countess Johanna Franziska von Stolzenberg.
It is possibly the most laborious and improbable meet-cutes in cinema history, and this is coming from the duo Wilder and Brackett, who are credited with having invented the meet-cute in their film Ninotchka.
And remember, they worked on this one for a long time. But the gag is that the dogs are proxies for the humans, and Brackett and Wilder, this is the subversive part, seem to think they'd be able to slip a fair amount of double entendres past the censors if the racy jokes were about mating dogs and not mating humans.
And if that's what they thought, they were wrong.
Because I constantly make logic, what they want to say, not logical, but cynical pictures. Mm-hmm. My pictures were cynical, that were bitter, and when I do a cynical one, they say, well, when are you going to do a funny one again? When I do a funny one, they say, what about those wonderful cynical things you did, like, say, Double Indemnity or Sunset Boulevard or Ace in the Hole, I don't know what you call it here in Belgium. That's another comedy. So I'm bound to disappoint somebody.
Mm-hmm. You're balancing all the time. So
well, yeah, I try to make the story which at the particular time interests me the most.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of story do you prefer? Cynical or funny?
A good one. One that will be most successful that will get the good reviews and get a lot of people to come in to see the picture.
Now, Brackett and Wilder may have thought their script would sail through the Production and Code Administration, or PCA, Joe Breen's powerful censorship organization. After all, there were no guns, aside from a hunting rifle, but more importantly, no murder, no obvious sex, and certainly no swearing. Or maybe they were savvy enough to know that Breen would see right through them. Either way, they turned in their first draft for review in late March or early April of 1946, and Breen replied in early May saying, quote, "We regret to report that in our opinion, this material is unacceptable from the standpoint of the production code. The basic unacceptability arises from offensive sex suggestiveness inherent in a parallel between the mating of two dogs and the love affair of their respective owners. Such a story would, we believe, be enormously offensive to mixed audiences everywhere." End quote.
Curses, foiled again. I love the mixed audiences part. Like, men alone at a stag party would be happy with this sort of material.
But put them together with somebody else.
No way. But as usual, a compromise was reached. As in any negotiation, both parties staked out positions that allowed for compromise, and after a sit-down with Breen and his henchmen, Brackett and Wilder agreed to remove the more overt references to dog sex. But the battle went on through filming, with the PCA pushing back on the use of the words son of a bitch and poop, even though the latter two were references to humans, and even dog wedding, which I guess had a connotation that was too sexy.
Ew. Wilder waggishly suggested he was tempted to replace son of a bitch with the line, "If you had a mother, she would bark." But it sounds like he kept that one to himself.
Wilder had already worked with some big stars, and for the role of Virgil Smith, he was about to work with the biggest one yet. He had actually met Bing Crosby back in 1926 when the crooner was touring Vienna with Paul Whiteman's jazz band. But by 1948, Crosby was the biggest thing going. He was the Motion Picture Herald's male box office champion for 5 years running, and he was ubiquitous on the radio. One estimate claimed more than half the recordings played on the radio had been made by Bing Crosby. And more pertinently to Wilder, Crosby had been the star of Going My Way, the 1944 film that swept the Oscars and shut out Double Indemnity.
I'd say if you can't beat him, join him, but Wilder did beat Crosby a year later when The Lost Weekend won Best Picture over Bing's The Bells of St. Mary's. Nonetheless, Wilder may have come to regret this particular casting decision.
I have no doubt that he did.
Opposite Crosby, playing Countess von Stolzenberg, would be Joan Fontaine, who had recently done the Hitchcock films Suspicion and Rebecca. She was actually under contract to David O. Selznick, that guy, who loaned her... Good old Selznick. He had loaned her out to RKO for Suspicion, who in turn loaned her out to Paramount for Emperor Waltz. She's like a star soccer player, just always out on loan, Keir. Although Fontaine wouldn't make as much money as Crosby herself, Paramount paid a cool $250,000 for her services to RKO, who then kicked back some of that to O. Selznick.
Both stars were big, and both were paid better than Charles Brackett, who was paid better than poor Billy Wilder, although his fees were going up, as we saw with his last picture. Wilder cast Oscar Karlweis, a stage actor and fellow refugee, as the Emperor, and even he got paid more than Billy.
Once again, Doane Harrison would edit and assist on the set, but for once, John Seitz would not be doing the cinematography. Because the Emperor Waltz would be Wilder's first color picture, Technicolor no less, Seitz was a master of black and white. But for a big-budget color film, Wilder needed someone who knew his way around red, blue, and green. George Barnes had a good reputation for working in color and had even shot Joan Fontaine in Mitchell Leisen's 1944 Technicolor adventure, Frenchman's Creek. So, he got the nod. Technicolor, by the way, was a beautiful but cumbersome early process by which movie cameras used a prism to split the image into 3 separate negatives for red, blue, and green, but were still black and white. These negatives were then turned into positives and dyed cyan, yellow, and magenta, and then through something called the dye transfer process became the vivid color films we remember today. We'll include a link to a good explainer in the show notes.
But we're still searching for a good explanation of why Wilder overcame his dislike of Technicolor to try it himself.
Keir, my favorite place to record the Filmographers podcast is in your studio in the Fine Arts Building, which is a place that you know a lot about.
I guess you could say I wrote the book on the subject. It's called Chicago's Fine Arts Building, Music, Magic, and Murder.
Whoa, murder?
Hey, artists have a lot of sharp objects lying around. And yes, while I do explore some of the darker things that have happened in this historic building, I focus more on its fascinating history and famous tenants, past and present.
I think my favorite story was about the Fine Arts Building's connection to Citizen Kane. I also love, and no offense, Keir, all the pretty pictures.
None taken, Mike. It's a beautiful hardcover book loaded with stunning photographs and archival images that looks great on your coffee table, or the coffee table of any arts lover in your family.
Listeners, you can order signed, personalized copies of Chicago's Fine Arts Building, Music, Magic, and Murder from our favorite bookstore, Exile and Bookville, located in the Fine Arts Building at 410 South Michigan Avenue. Or find them online at exileandbookville.com. Just use the notes field to tell them how Keir should inscribe it.
It's also available from the publisher at trope.com and wherever books are sold. Mike, so far, Billy Wilder's sets have been professional and smoothly run. This production, well, I'd say it's a candidate for one of our favorite movie podcasts, What Went Wrong? But this time we'll chronicle what went wrong ourselves.
You know, as somebody who has made movies, I usually don't like to rub salt in the wounds of troubled productions, but for this one, I'm going to make an exception here.
First of all, the budget for The Emperor Waltz was $2,879,000, more than twice what it had cost to make Double Indemnity. And you know what they say, mo money, mo problems. With all this money, Wilder was going to take 300 cast and crew members, a record-breaking number, on a location shoot to Jasper, Alberta, where the Canadian Rockies would stand in for the Austrian Alps. They would build a mountain village, a fake island, paint roads and flowers, and even import pine trees from California when nature let them down. From Hollywood, screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz joked, quote, "It only goes to show you what God could do if he had the money."
Oh man, there's a good season. The Mankiewicz brothers, like especially Herman, is endlessly quotable. That would be fascinating. Yeah. Now that said, Wilder was suspicious of color, and on the front page of the screenplay, he and Brackett had added this command: just because it's in Technicolor, don't let's have the Emperor wear canary yellow Jaegers and a purple jockstrap. So. It was definitely in color, but he wanted to avoid, as he said, making it look, quote, like it was an ice cream parlor. Another thing that would run the budget up was, well, acts of God. Weather in the Rockies can be unpredictable, especially in the springtime. Filming started on June 1st, and rain and clouds kept them from filming on 18 of the 30 days they were on location. If your scene starts with blue skies, after all, it probably should end with them too.
Can we talk about Bing now?
I thought you'd never ask here.
Our son has been blessed with a great gift, and I'm going to do everything I can to nurture that talent and help him succeed. And then I'm going to use him to live out all my frustrated hopes and dreams, because that's good parenting. Right, Bing Crosby?
That's right, Peter. And if your kids give you any lip, you can beat them with a sack of sweet Valencia oranges. They won't leave a bruise, and they'll let them know who's boss. There's no doubt about it.
That doesn't sound right.
I have to admit, Mike, this one bummed me out. I don't know much about Bing Crosby, but I like Mele Kalikimaka as much as the next guy at the holidays, and I guess I bought into his nice guy image. Turns out he was kind of a prick.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly here.
Joan Fontaine, late in life, gave some very revealing and much quoted interviews about Crosby, saying he treated her dismissively, and she was a big star too. But Crosby was the king of Paramount, the golden boy. He knew it, and he acted like it. And worst of all, he pulled rank on Wilder and Brackett. They had hired their own writer, Jacques Thierry, to polish the script while they were directing and producing. Thierry is not credited, by the way. But Crosby, unrequested, brought his own writer or possibly writers on set with him. Fontaine said they came en masse on the set in the morning, and we all felt peripheral. One of Crosby's writers was Barney Dean, a hacky gag writer who worked with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby on their road movies. He may have been the one behind some of the cringy dialogue, like when Smith calls Stolzenberg Honey Countess.
Wild. Wild. And Brackett and Wilder didn't only take pride in their writing, they were respected by their peers as being among the very best. So they had to have been absolutely grinding their teeth when, as Fontaine described, quote, "One morning on the set, when we were back in Hollywood, I remember well that Mr. Crosby handed Billy some new lines and said, 'This is what we're going to do,' quote." Apparently, it was a scene that played out on multiple occasions.
Even the dogs didn't like Bing. Apparently, during one take, Buttons bit Crosby on the nose hard enough to break the skin. Granted, the dogs didn't always hit their marks, but Crosby took to yelling at Buttons to make him perform.
Yeah, he probably kicked him when nobody was looking too. Now, one other thing that went wrong was that Oscar Karlweis, who, remember, was playing the Emperor, a key role, was fired on July 22nd, his last day of shooting. We don't know why Wilder made this choice, but we do know it meant the whole role had to be reshot. He called on Richard Hayden, who played Professor Oddity in Ball of Fire, to step in. Hayden required 3 hours of makeup to be aged up properly, but he did a nice job with what is a rather melancholy role.
The script was finally completed on September 3rd, and production wrapped on September 30th. That was 28 days behind schedule and more than $1.2 million over budget.
So this had to mean that Paramount was eager to put it out and recoup their investment, right? Right?
Well, we'll get to that.
We're going to give you a longer plot summary than usual because, and maybe we're wrong, but we suspect some of you, if not most, may not rush out to watch The Emperor Waltz, especially not after this episode. We don't blame you, but you'll have to at least know a little bit about the story to understand why there's more going on here than meets the eye. And it's, look, I'll say this, Keir, it is worth, you and I, look, we host this damn thing. We're completionists, so if you're a Wilder completionist, you got to do it. It's not that bad, but it's not great.
Yeah, we'll talk at the very end of this episode about some films that are really, really hard to watch. This one is not that. Now, the movie opens with a Mission Impossible style sequence. On a snowy night, a serious-looking Virgil Smith approaches a palace where a large ball is taking place. He scales a wall, breaks a window, and lets himself into the balcony where he looks down on a vast ballroom full of waltzing nobles. For some reason, nobody notices the cold draft from the window he just broke.
Or the sound of the window breaking. I'm glad I'm not the only one who noticed that, Keir. That bugged me a lot. Anyway, Smith makes his way onto the dance floor, cuts in on the Countess, and the camera cuts to a quartet of oldsters who explain these two have a history. They're sort of the Statler and Waldorf of this picture. Then we're into a flashback with Smith arriving at the palace on a sunny day.
Again with the flashbacks, just like Double Indemnity. And hey, like Double Indemnity, there's a key scene of being on a balcony looking down on a floor below. It's a little visual quote almost. As we said earlier, Smith is there to play his gramophone for the Emperor. Inside the palace, the Emperor, a lonely old man, asks the Countess for her dog Scheherazade's paw. You see, he wants to mate his poodle with her poodle so he can have puppies to keep him company in his old age. It's important to note that both poodles are black.
In the waiting room, Smith's mysterious device is mistaken for a bomb and he's thrown out. But before he can leave, his dog Buttons tingles with Scheherazade and gets bitten. The Countess blows him off and leaves, but Smith tracks her down at her palace to demand compensation or an apology, or I don't know why the hell he goes there.
This sets the pattern for the movie, with the dogs as proxies for the human romance. The dogs will fight and then fall for each other, and so will their owners. When the Countess takes her dog to the Emperor's mountain hideaway so the dogs can be bred, Smith follows, hatching absurd plans to stalk the Emperor and demonstrate his gramophone.
Meanwhile, the poodles won't mate, because apparently Scheherazade has been traumatized by her encounter with Buttons, something the vet discovers during a Freudian psychoanalysis session. He recommends Scheherazade and Buttons make friends.
But after ruining the Emperor's hunt by playing a record in the forest and scaring away a stag, Smith is about to get deported. This leads to a charming encounter between the dogs that finally breaks the ice between Smith and the Countess. They fall in love, but it's a love that must be kept secret because he's a common American salesman and she's, well, royalty.
Though it's worth noting that Virgil had already smooched the Countess when he came in and demanded an apology over his dog being bitten. And it was one hell of an awkward kiss.
It did not feel consensual.
No. Anyway, the Emperor forbids their marriage, he just kisses her. I got to go back to this. He just storms up and kisses her. I wonder if that's even in the script. It feels like
I was going to say, I wonder if that's like a Bing edition where it's like, it feels like I would kiss her right here.
I feel like just run up and smooch her for no reason whatsoever. It's awkward, uncomfortable. Even Fontaine looks like she's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Poor Fontaine. We'll get to that. Anyway, let's get back to the plot summary. The Emperor forbids their marriage, making the possibly reasonable point that an Austrian noblewoman will not be happy living in a New Jersey duplex with her mother-in-law while Virgil is out on the road selling gramophones.
I've seen these things happen before, Mr. Smith. I've seen them happen over and over again. There was a grandniece of mine who ran away with a fencing master, an archduchess who fell in love with a tourist guide in Egypt. Princes have eloped with soubrettes, princesses with head waiters.
Why not? They loved each other.
Why not? Let me tell you why not.
That's kind of sensible. And Virgil also sees this point. And in a classic romantic comedy move, he pretends he's choosing the Emperor's endorsement over the Countess.
And that's where we pick things up. End flashback. End very long flashback. Virgil is only at the ball because now Buttons is pining for Scheherazade, but Scheherazade is in labor. The Emperor is called to the stables to pace the hallway outside like a father outside a delivery room. Inside the delivery room, however, the puppies have been born not black, but white. Buttons, the American mixed breed dog, is the father.
This is a Maury Povich shit. The Countess's social climbing father is horrified and lies to the Emperor that the pups were born dead. Then he orders the veterinarian to actually kill them. The vet puts the puppies in a basket in the sink and turns on the water.
But Virgil rescues them. He races into the ballroom and confronts the Emperor, believing the Emperor is the one who ordered the little dogs killed.
But the Emperor is a kindly old man. He doesn't care about the puppies' bloodline. He wants to keep them.
And when the Countess learns Virgil's true motivation, she insists she wants to be a New Jersey housewife after all.
Last time, like a chump, I kept my mouth shut. And what did you do? You sold me a bill of goods about the wrong side of the tracks and me not being good enough. You remember?
Are we discussing the Countess von Stolzenberg, or the contents of that basket?
Well, it amounts to the same thing, only now I know, with your very kind permission, that you were full of cracked dice. Or maybe I was, to fall for it and walk out and make a heel out of myself.
Virgil, will you say that again, please? Slowly and plainly and simply.
Not now, honey countess.
Mike, before we get into some of the darker themes, what did you think of The Emperor Waltz?
I liked it. Kidding. No, it's bad. It's really bad. And look, while I've gone on record stating my general dislike for musicals, this kind of isn't even much of a musical. There's really barely any songs in it, which probably leads to the most salient point, Keir. The movie is boring. I think Brackett saw the same thing. You know, you have this big Technicolor production, the world's crooniest crooner and biggest star. You have a big budget, an A-list director, and what you get somehow is pretty dull. It's just, you know, the dialogue has its moments. You know, you can feel Wilder and Brackett kind of just being, you know, part of their genius rising to the fore of this. Not very often, but the dialogue is largely pretty flat, thanks Bing. And while I joked about this earlier, the chemistry between Fontaine and Crosby is just DOA. You know, I'm not the biggest Fontaine fan. She comes off as, to me, I feel hollow in most of her pictures, but the problem really is Crosby.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I think I like her a little more than you do. I don't think she's great, but I can't blame her for anything in this movie.
No, neither can I. I mean, you can see Bing's ego suffocating every scene. There's this moment, I'm sure you recall, that after the dogs attacked each other again, there goes Wilder's rule, by the way, of never having the same thing happen in a movie twice. Thanks again, Bing. Bing goes on a verbal rampage about how he's going to get the U.S. to wage war on Austria, and that Austria will never be able to use the Panama Canal, and on and on and on. And I'm watching this thinking, like, there is no goddamn way Wilder and Brackett wrote a scene this bad. They didn't write a word of this crap dialogue, and I'm willing to bet that that's absolutely true. That's all Bing and his need to just chew the scenery to bits.
Yeah, it doesn't. There, as you say, like there's a lot that's not great about this movie, but you can definitely see Brackett and Wilder's fingerprints on it, and there are some clever lines, and there are some things that feel like Brackett and Wilder, and then there are these just weirdly tonally disconnected things, like that speech that just feel, you know, even if Wilder's struggling with, you know, his Europeanness and his Americanness, that just don't feel like anything he would ever do.
No, they don't. And it's also, you know what, here's the you know, easiest sign, the clearest sign is that everything that we know from Wilder and Brackett is economical. You know, they get right to the punch, right to the punchline, right to the point, right to the clever twist. And this just goes on and on and on. It doesn't even really go anywhere. So the economy that we know from Wilder and Brackett doesn't exist in this scene and others. So yeah, you just can feel it's not them. In addition to that, if that weren't enough, in addition to that, the movie suffers from improbability. Look, plenty of good rom-coms take extraordinary leaps of logic, and that is fine. But The Emperor Waltz takes the cake. Like Crosby as an American salesman trying to sell record players in Austria prior to World War I. It's like, what? Like, how did he get there? Like, it strains credulity just past the breaking point, and the entire setup of the dogs mating and the seriousness in which it's taken is simply exhausting. I got to the scene where the Freudian psychiatrist is evaluating the dog, and I'm just like, what the hell are we even doing here? I did not like this movie. I am sorry. I love Wilder. I love Brackett, you know, but I could not enjoy this movie. Keir, what about you?
Well, the scene with the dog psychoanalysis is actually one of the few times I did laugh. Maybe I was so desperate for something that was funny. I thought the dog's acting was quite good in that. And it was a funny little callback to a story Wilder loved to tell, probably false, about how when he was a reporter, he was thrown out of Sigmund Freud's office when he was trying to get a quote. That gag gave me a chuckle, but I'm with you. This was the first Wilder film I really just didn't like. The story behind it was interesting because Wilder is interesting and his career is interesting. But the film itself was a rough watch. My wife, Mariah, liked it even less than I did. She volunteered to make popcorn and said, "Don't bother to pause."
Did she come back? Did she go out to get it? Did she go out to get a pack of cigarettes on you?
I'm still waiting for her to return to our home. No, she came back eventually with popcorn, but man, that was a long break. Look, there was a lack of chemistry with Crosby and Fontaine, as you said. And I don't think I'm saying this because of what I learned behind the scenes. I just don't think they click. And Sykov, one of the authors we keep going back to again and again, because he's written a really definitive biography, had a really interesting point when he called Crosby essentially a solitary figure. And it's true. His most successful roles were either as another man's sidekick or a priest. He's just too in love with himself to convincingly portray love for someone else. I do think Fontaine does her best, and I think she's fine given the circumstances, but the romance fizzles. He is so unlikable. I probably like musicals a little more than you. I'm not a big musical fan, but I would say in the last decade of my life or whatever, I've kind of made peace with musicals and I found a few I like. But and I don't think Wilder was trying to make a true musical here. I think he called it something like a comedy with songs. And he even claimed that the songs in this would all have a reason for being there. They would tell part of the story, but I don't think he lived up to that. I think he just knew he needed a few songs and musical sequences with Crosby to cash in on Crosby's appeal to the general public. So yeah, it's neither fish nor fowl. It's not truly a comedy nor truly a musical. And I didn't love the songs.
Have you ever seen a Lubitsch musical?
I have not.
Yeah, me neither. I would like to. I'd be interested, especially seeing how it functions in comparison to how the Emperor Waltz functions. Because, like you said, Wilder was trying to maybe not ape Lubitsch, but maybe homage Lubitsch.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if there is an apt comparison between the way Lubitsch did musicals and the way Wilder approached this. There might be another leap there, though, because there might be how Lubitsch approached, how Wilder approached, and then how this movie actually got made with the intrusion of Bing and all that, and what actually got created rather than what Wilder's intentions were.
And we call ourselves the Filmographers, and we haven't even watched all of Lubitsch's films before we started this Wilder season. How dare we?
How dare we? How dare we? You're right.
Listeners, we'll do our best to make up for that so we can be truly informed. But yeah, I would be curious to see a Lubitsch musical. I'm going to try to squeeze that in if I can.
There's a Criterion box set. I know that. I don't know if it's all of them, but there is a box set of Lubitsch musicals that's available through Criterion. So excuse to blow more money, Keir. The 50% off sale for those listening is probably on right now. So Barnes & Noble, they're 50% off sale. Just blow through that money. Who cares?
That's all we need. Excuse to buy more DVDs. As you said, it's ultimately just kind of slow and boring. And we're not alone in thinking this, as we will see. But even though the movie more or less fizzles, there are some interesting things about it. As we said up top, Wilder may have been working through his new American identity, and it seems like he's choosing the new world over the old. And interestingly, the one strong German accent in the film belongs to the vet, who first plays Shrink in the psychoanalysis scene we referred to. But then it grows more sinister. When the Countess's father, the Baron, gives the order to execute the puppies, Dr. Zweibach, played by Sig Ruman from Ninotchka, pulls them off their mother's nipples, puts them in a cage-like basket, and makes ready to drown them. Their crime is that they are not pure-blooded. They are mongrels. After Virgil rescues them, while Deutschland über alles plays during the Emperor's entrance, he makes the following accusation.
They're not pure enough for you, huh? Not quite your sort. Freaks. Little mongrels you wouldn't have around. So what are you going to do? You're going to shake them off that great, big, noble family tree of yours and let them rot, as if nothing had happened.
Wilder's mother died in a Nazi death camp. Wilder probably only survived because he fled. So to Wilder, he's the puppy who almost got drowned.
Another interesting exchange here is when the Emperor basically says his culture is dying and America is the future.
Because you're so much better than we are?
I don't say we are better. As a matter of fact, I think you are better. You are simpler, you are stronger. Ultimately, the world will be yours.
You bet it will.
It's just a little unfortunate that Bing Crosby is the stand-in for everything that's good about America.
Yeah, America's a complicated place, Keir. Keir, if someone's coming to Chicago, what's one place they have to visit?
Mike, no one should leave town without stopping by Exile in Bookville, the city's most beautiful and carefully curated bookstore. It's located on the second floor of the historic Fine Arts Building at 410 South Michigan Avenue.
Hey, didn't you write a book about the Fine Arts Building?
Why, yes, I did. It's called Chicago's Fine Arts Building, Music, Magic, and Murder, and you can find it at Exile.
Exile is the best. Wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling books, all lovingly selected by owners Javier and Kristen Ramirez. I guarantee you'll find something to read. Their recommendations are always on point.
Their strong suit may be general and literary fiction, but I particularly love the middle room. That's where I find graphic novels as well as books about art and music, cooking and cocktails, and our personal favorite, books about movies.
Javier and Kristen were kind enough to let the Filmographers recommend our favorites, so stop by and see what we selected.
I wrote a shelf talker for one of my all-time favorites, Kyle Buchanan's Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, the wild and true story of Mad Max Fury Road.
They also stocked one of my faves, Sam Wasson's The Big Goodbye, Chinatown, and the Last Years of Hollywood.
Exile also has nonfiction, short stories, small press titles, and the very best in modern horror.
Listeners, if you're coming to Chicago, don't leave without visiting Exile in Bookville in the Fine Arts Building at 410 South Michigan Avenue. But you don't have to come to Chicago. You can find all they have to offer at exileinbookville.com.
That's exileinbookville.com, because there's more to life than movies. There are also books.
About movies.
The Emperor Waltz did not come out right away. There were two problematic screenings. One was a private showing for Ernst Lubitsch, the man to whom the movie was intended as an homage. He didn't like it. As soon as he realized the movie was going to the dogs, he stage whispered to his wife, "The son of a bitch has taken my story." Apparently, he had once told Wilder he wanted to make a movie about a quarreling couple who used their dog to communicate.
The screening for Paramount executives went even worse. They didn't think it was very funny, so Frank Freeman, the same executive who held up The Lost Weekend for months, decided to hold its release indefinitely, supposedly until they could find the best way to sell it. As with The Lost Weekend, Freeman was overruled by Paramount's president, Barney Balaban. Freeman thought there was no sense sending good money after bad by spending money on prints and publicity for a film that he thought would flop. Balaban believed if they had made the movie, they might as well release it.
Still, they held it for almost 2 years. In the meantime, Ernst Lubitsch died, allegedly of a heart attack after spending the afternoon with a prostitute. He was only 55 years old. Wilder was a pallbearer at the funeral, and Brackett delivered the eulogy. Famously, after the service at Forest Lawn, Wilder said to William Wyler, "No more Ernst Lubitsch," to which Wyler replied, "Worse than that, no more Lubitsch pictures." It was the end of an era.
Eager fans see Alan Ladd enter the theater that's swarming with celebrities. Anita Colby's partner for the waltz is Clark Gable, who says,
"Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Being a Crosby-Fontaine fan is a little crowded at times. However, I'm sure it's well worth it. I hear this is a wonderful movie. Good luck to them and to Paramount."
When the film finally had its premiere on May 26, 1948 at the Paramount Hollywood Theater, Wilder wasn't even there. He was on vacation in Europe. If the movie tanked, he didn't want to be anywhere near it.
Charles Brackett did show up, however. In his diary, he wrote, "I guess it played pretty well, but the absence of belly laughs disturbed me, and the fact that it is in no way outstanding, except for cast and expense. I think the audience liked it pretty well, if not passionately." Afterwards, Paramount gave a party for about 400 at the Beverly Hills Hotel, very well done, with lots of violins, with Crosby, with the Eastern executives. To me, it was nothing but a chore, a laudable attempt to launch the picture properly.
All the worrying was for nothing. The reviews weren't all raves, but they were generally positive. James Agee, writing for The Times, wrote, At its best, this semi-musical is amusing and well-shaped because Charles Brackett and Billy Wilder have learned a fair amount from the comedies of Ernst Lubitsch. At its worst, it yaps and embraces every unguarded leg in sight. Which is a line that might have made Wilder smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not bad. The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "Here's a picture that'll bring lots of joy to the box office and even more to those who go in to see it. Bing has never been cast better, nor has he given a better performance and in wonderful voice too. Charles Brackett and Billy Wilder get better with every picture." Okie dokie, so far so good. The Motion Picture Herald even opined, "Bing was never better than in The Emperor Waltz and not as good since Going My Way."
According to Gene D. Phillips in Some Like It Wilder, the movie has been thought of as a financial failure, but wasn't. He says it recouped its costs and even turned a modest profit. And that's probably where the casting of Bing Crosby paid off. He had millions of fans, and they would go see everything he made.
Bing Crosby is just the Taylor Swift of his time.
Well, at least financially. We'll leave the final judgment to the film's screenwriters. Brackett said, "I can't imagine what went wrong. We did have Bing Crosby. The final result was quite dull." And Wilder said, "I can't get it into my head that people break into song, but they do. I was handicapped. I was not up to making a musical."
That's fair. You know, one thing I love about Wilder, Keir, I think you agree, is he's always honest. Like, he seems to have especially later in his life as he recollects things, he has a really good and sharp assessment of his own career.
Yeah, he's never defending it like, "Oh, it was just misunderstood. I'm this genius. People didn't get it." He's like, "Yeah, sometimes they didn't come out so well."
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear him talk. He's very, very candid, very honest. So I can definitely see him saying that. But we'd love to hear what you have to say as well. Listeners, have you seen The Emperor Waltz? Are you planning to? Let us know. Email us at thefilmographerspodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Instagram at @thefilmographers.
I have done every kind of picture except a Western. However, I think that the wise man is Hitchcock, who's known for his suspense pictures. He does a certain kind of a picture, does it beautifully, and people know what to expect. But it would it would bother me. It would bother me I would find it boring, to do always the same kind of a picture. I try to switch styles. When I'm very, very sad, I'd like to make a comedy. And when I'm in a very happy mood, I'd like to make a very heavy drama.
Mike, if we haven't already talked listeners out of watching The Emperor Waltz, where can they find it?
Alas, this one isn't streaming anywhere. Actually, I did find it in like the depths of YouTube somewhere, or an offshoot of YouTube. Yeah, it was not, I'll admit, it was not a great transfer, but it was proper. It functioned, so you can find it streaming. I think you just search The Emperor Waltz streaming, and it's like the second or third hit. But if you don't want to do that, and if you want something of better quality, there is a reasonably priced Blu-ray from Kino Lorber Studio Classics with a solid commentary track from film historian Joseph McBride, who maybe he's not our favorite commentary guy. He is solid and certainly knows his Wilder. And while you're there at Kino Lorber, I mean, you could pick up, I think they have like probably almost 10 Wilder movies, if I'm somewhere close to there. So you can rack up a lot of his career at one location. But if you're not ready to part with the $15 the DVD costs, I don't know, try your library. Lots of them still have DVDs, or I don't know, just watch a better movie. Watch White Christmas. What the hell? It's another Bing. It's a better comedy. Michael Curtiz. Fine.
Well, we're just about to wrap up this episode with our latest Filmographers 5, a list of 5 films somehow related to the film we just discussed. Curious how we'll tie it in? Stay with us.
But first, if you enjoyed today's episode and you want to thank Keir and me for all the hard work we put into it, please visit patreon.com/thefilmographerspodcast and join our community right now. Patreon is not only the best way you can support us financially, it's the only place where you'll find every single thing that we share. If you support us at the $5 a month level, we'll send you a mug. And for $2 a month, you'll get a handsome Filmographer sticker for your laptop, locker, or trapper keeper.
Not ready to join Patreon? Please review the show. The best place for the almighty algorithm is Apple Podcasts, but you can comment on a YouTube episode or even on Spotify. Every little interaction helps us raise our profile and find more listeners. If you've been thinking about doing it, don't put it off any longer. Our fingers are crossed you'll give us 5 stars.
When it comes to Christmas movies, there are no shortage of choices. There's movies about big city women finding small town love, movies about princes from fictional countries also finding love, and all kinds of people finding love around the Christmas tree. But I've got something different for you. Holiday Holdup, a movie I co-directed and wrote, and it's about a group of restaurant employees who get fired on Christmas Eve and decide to exact revenge on their miserly boss. It's light, it's fun, and don't worry, there is some romance. You can watch Holiday Holdup for free on Pluto, Tubi, YouTube, and more. Watch it with your friends, your family, and from us here at the Filmographers podcast, we wish you a wonderful holiday season.
So, the restaurant is closing, effective immediately. But tomorrow, I'm still hosting my holiday poker game and I'll need staff to work it.
You shouldn't do this to people, not on Christmas. Have any of you noticed your paychecks being a little late? I saw something weird on Chip's computer. I'm pretty sure I'm like $14 short.
These irregularities, they don't happen by accident. What you need is someone who knows their way around such things. There's gonna be like 60K in that place tomorrow night.
They're gonna be playing poker for a few hours. That gives us plenty of time, crack open the safe, get that money, and get out.
All right. Let the games begin.
Christmas is coming.
I can explain.
I had nothing to do with this. Nothing.
It's Christmas time.
Okay, it's time for the Filmographers 5. Are we going with Bing Crosby movies? Viennese fantasies? Neither. These are our top 5 films with dogs.
With one big caveat, though, these are movies with dogs that are not tearjerkers. That'd be too easy.
Mike, that rules out like 80% of the dog movies.
It does, but we gotta do it anyway. So Keir, no more stalling. Let's do this.
Okay. Our number 5 dog movie that isn't a tearjerker is Isle of Dogs, Wes Anderson's 2018 stop-motion comedy drama set in Japan. It's very much an Anderson joint, replete with orchestrated pageantry, lots of symmetry, and characters embarking on a precarious adventure. This isn't one of Anderson's very best. It's not even his best stop-motion, which would be The Fantastic Mr. Fox, but it's pretty good. And we love the dogs.
Our number 4 dog movie that isn't a tearjerker also features stop-motion animation, Tim Burton's Frankenweenie, a 2012 parody/homage of Frankenstein, which itself is a remake of his 1984 short. There's not a lot of horror for kids out there, it's very hard to do, so it's nice when such a solid entry comes along, and Frankenweenie is solid. Plus, it's Burton, so you know what you're gonna get, but this is what he's good at.
Our number 3 dog movie that's not a tearjerker is As Good as It Gets, James L. Brooks' 1997 comedy starring Jack Nicholson as a misanthropic writer with OCD who has to take care of a dog. The movie feels almost like it's the last of its kind, a big-budget, character-driven romantic dramedy, and audiences loved it. It even gave Nicholson another Best Actor statue. But no Oscars for the dog, who, unsurprisingly, helps melt Jack's crusty heart.
And our number 2 dog movie that's not a tearjerker is Best in Show, Christopher Guest's 2000 comedy that sends up dog shows with a brilliant ensemble cast. The movie is an absolute riot, and it's always a treat to see Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, and John Michael Higgins riff on each other. Guest was ahead of his time with his fake documentaries, and I recommend checking out all of his movies. And just remember, this one makes fun of dog owners, not dogs. The dogs are fine.
And our number 1 movie featuring dogs that isn't a tearjerker is Babe, Chris Noonan's heartwarming 1995 film for kids of all ages.
I care that is not a movie about a dog. That is a movie about a pig. It's a pig.
Who thinks he's a sheepdog.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. If I'm being honest, though, Babe does make me cry a little bit. It's kind of a tearjerker.
But at least he doesn't die at the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that's it for this episode of the Filmographers podcast.
That'll do, Pig. That'll do.
Thank you so much for joining us on our season-long exploration of the films of Billy Wilder.
Have a comment or suggestion? We want to hear from you. Please email us at thefilmographerspodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you, as always, to our fantastic producer, Kevin Lau, who makes our podcast sound and look like $1 million. Our theme music was composed and played by Gompson, and our logo and merch is designed by Cosmo Graff.
Join us in 2 weeks for Wilder's 6th film, A Foreign Affair, in which the director returns to Europe, but this is after World War II, not before World War I.